My name is Justin Decloux, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're talking about Spider-Man. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size. Catches thieves just like flies. Watch out! Here comes the Spider-Man.
In the chill of night.
I don't know that part.
Scene of a crime. I forget the rest.
We've talked a lot about Batman, Will's favorite.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about Spider-Man.
What's
my
your
favorite?
What's your relationship with Spider-Man? Tell me all about him.
So Spider-Man...
First of all, who is he? Who's behind the mask?
Oh, well, I don't know if I feel comfortable telling you this, unless maybe you are a dying child, like the classic Spider-Man comic where he reveals his identity, and the last panel is him at a cancer ward, and that's the only reason that he did it.
All right, here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me who Spider-Man is, and then everybody listening is going to be like those New Yorkers on the subway train and say, hey, you want to get the Spider-Man, you got to come through us.
He looks as old as my kid, like a 36-year-old man, I guess. Yeah. So Spider-Man for me, and I actually took notes on this of like, where did I discover Spider-Man? Why did he become my favorite?
I'm going to sit back and put a coin in the slot and just enjoy.
And I will say, we are talking about Sam Raimi Spider-Man films here. If people are excited for us to talk about Mark Webb's Spider-Man or
the little kid who's
Tom
Spider-Man
Holland's
now,
Spider-Man, directed by John Watts. Yes, that's correct. That's who directed those movies.
Or these Spider-Man cartoons that have been coming out lately.
I mean, there's always Spider-Man cartoons. The ones that, thankfully, aren't woke, as the main voice actor said.
Is that true?
He did say that.
But they are.
I know that's the defining point of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So Spider-Man for me, as that theme song that I sang at the beginning of the episode, I think that's probably where I ran into him for the first time. Those not good Ralph Bakshi Spider-Man cartoons, which were in syndication when I was a kid. If people haven't seen these, because why would they play on television and why would you go watch them unless
today?
Yeah. It was voiced by a guy who did Spider-Man in a really deep voice like this, who sounded like a 45-year-old man.
I've run out of web.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh no! And I was like, what I associate with Spider-Man is the fact that he doesn't move very much.
Yeah.
And I have a distinct memory of being a kid, and I tuned in with my dad to watch the Ralph Bakshi Spider-Man, and it wasn't that. It was Radioactive Spider-Man, the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
I remember it well. That was on TV, and it was really cool.
Spider-Man was not allowed to, I think, throw more than one punch an episode. So if you watch it, Spider-Man's constantly jumping out of the way, webbing things, and maybe like accidentally dropping them on his villains. But what that show had was a huge comic book continuity. They couldn't do like fight scenes, but what they could do is have every villain in the world. Stan Lee shows up. There's alternate dimensions where they meet other Spider-Man as well. I ate that stuff up. I think it played in syndication in Canada.
It was on YTV.
We could watch it every day. So that would be like appointment viewing for me. And I even remember that the two comic books that were the first that were bought for me. And I know this because comics were not allowed when I was a kid. At a certain point, my mom said, I don't know what I was doing, but at a certain point, both my parents took me aside. This is when they were still together. And they said, you're not allowed to watch Power Rangers. You're not allowed to watch Beetlejuice, the cartoon. You're not allowed to read comic books anymore.
Well, first of all, if you say Beetlejuice's name 3 times, he appears.
Don't say it.
So that was a good thing they laid down.
The juice is loose, as Michael Keaton said very energetically in the recent movie. And so my dad, I don't remember what happened, but doesn't remember this at all, I'm sure. But like, we were just at a Shoppers Drug Mart, and he's like, hey, kid, I got you this. And it was Woody Woodpecker, issue number 6, which came out in November 1992, and Marvel Tales number 265. And what's amazing about this comic is that when I say that this is the defining Spider-Man comic and kind of got me into comic books as a whole, it is the worst Spider-Man comic. It's a reprint of an annual where it reveals his parents were secret agents. Terrible. One of the worst parts of Spider-Man mythology that I wish they would completely forget. But I'm in. These are the first two. Obviously, you know how much I love Woody Woodpecker as well. No, that one threw to the garbage. Don't care about that.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you quickly.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you that I had one Spider-Man comic when I was a kid.
Which one was it?
Well, I'm going to show Justin the picture.
Okay.
And I'm trembling just looking at this. I'm sorry that you people can't see it. It's this one.
I had that comic as well.
Okay.
The Hollow Foil 30th Anniversary Spider-Man comics. There were multiple of them because there were multiple Spider-Man titles at that time.
So cool.
So cool. And this brings a thing of what what got me into Spider-Man comics in the 90s as well was this was the extreme 90s. So like Venom is coming out, Carnage. I love these guys.
Man, it's the Attitude Era. We got Stone Cold Steve Austin. We got The Undertaker.
I remember reading a Carnage issue #1 comic at the Mandarin Chinese food buffet, and a kid coming up to me and be like, oh man, where did you get that? We all had Spider-Man fever at this time.
Well, okay, obviously I was a huge Batman partisan as a kid. Loved Batman, still love Batman. Watching these Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies again, I sort of think Spider-Man is the better hero for a child. And look, we all get it.
Yeah.
Batman, he's a capitalist.
He's rich.
He's an oligarch who beats up criminals and poor people. You know, you've heard that epic take before. But the fact is that Peter Parker is just a regular working class kid who, when he puts on the mask, becomes Spider-Man. And you too can be Spider-Man if you put on the mask.
And I think that what really made me fall in love with Spider-Man beyond just like, I like the iconography, it's a cartoon that I watch, there's toys everywhere, it's extreme, is one birthday, my mom got me the Essential Spider-Man, which were, Marvel was doing these black and white reprints. There'd be about 20 issues per volume. It only cost $20, so that was affordable as a birthday gift. And it reprinted Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's original run of Spider-Man. And the thing about these comics is that they had the formula down right away, and that formula is what I love about Spider-Man. Spider-Man being a huge fucking loser, constantly failing, but then having to force his way to just get through it. And also, people may not know this, listening to me on this podcast, Spider-Man being an annoying jackass who does not shut up and keeps making jokes. Love that as a kid.
It is amazing how those early Stan Lee, Steve Ditko Spider-Man comics, it's like, it is fully formed. You're right. It's like
fully formed.
With Batman, with Superman.
It takes time, yeah. But like, they just had it down, like the fact that he's a scientist, he created his own webbings, he has his suit, he quips, and he's also a loser. Like, in the first issue of Spider-Man, he meets the Fantastic Four, and he's like, hey, can I join you guys? And they're like, no, I don't think that'll be happening. So he is always on, like, the lowest pedestal, which is funny because Spider-Man is probably in the top 3, like Batman, Spider-Man. I think those are probably the most popular superheroes, right? And like you said, Batman and Spider-Man are two different sides of the coin, which is like Batman is a power fantasy. Spider-Man is more relatable. And that's like, depending on which kid you will go towards. You can like Superman, but like, it's a different kind of kid.
Superman's literally an alien.
Yes.
And people can identify with Superman in the sense of alienation he can feel, but it's not the same. And like Superman is literally invulnerable, which Batman and Spider-Man are not.
And I look at those, Steve Ditko Spider-Man comics, and I already see kind of the seeds of stuff that I would like even in cinema, the like gravity-defying action, the way that the idea of a Spider-Man, I don't like spiders. Like, I don't care that, like, he's a Spider-Man. There's nothing really cool about that, but it's everything around it that's really interesting. And so, like, from Spider-Man, a movie's announced. Sam Raimi Spider-Man film.
And by the way, between, like, Christopher Reeve as Superman in 1978 and Tobey Maguire being Spider-Man in 2002, there were so many announcements of Spider-Man projects, so many aborted Spider-Man
Albert
movies.
Pune Spider-Man, Toby Hooper Spider-Man. This is in the canon era.
My God, what a loss for history that we didn't get Albert Pune Spider-Man. But we might have got James Cameron Spider-Man with Leonardo DiCaprio.
He really, really wanted to make it. On the best movies never made, they did a multi-part breakdown of his script. Do not like it. Not good.
How did he change the concept?
Like, very dark, and like, I think Spider-Man like doesn't even like being Spider-Man in it. James Cameron, I think the issue with him doing Spider-Man is that is the antithesis hero to who James Cameron is, right? That it's like a weird mismatch of content versus creator and the stories he likes to tell. Like, loser who likes to be punished. That's for me, that's Spider-Man. Spider-Man, the classic, the animated movie we all love, and that sequel's going to come out any day now of Beyond the Spider-Verse. Anyone can be Spider-Man. That's something that was eventually evolved and as a concept. But for me, he's always been poor, a loser. He's late to things. He fights, he quips, but he's very sad at the same time. And that's what I relate to as a superhero.
Now, when I suggested talking about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies for this podcast, it was mostly because, folks, we wanted to give you something popular.
Yes. You know what this is. You've seen these movies if you're listening to this.
So click. And hey, why not subscribe to the Patreon?
And why not share it with people as well?
Yeah. Oh, give us a review on iTunes, please.
A positive review, please.
Yeah, please. We've had enough negative reviews.
Yes.
But I was interested in this as a transition film, if not like the defining film in the ongoing superhero boom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the Richard Donner Superman from 1978. There's the Tim Burton Batman from 1989, both of which can be justly credited with having started the superhero genre as we know it today. But this movie is really the template that like created the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Now, I will say there were some movies that came out before this. For example, Bryan Singer's X-Men.
Yeah.
But that movie is a shame to be adapting what it's doing. Like, Bryan Singer does not like the X-Men or what they represent in comic book form. Sam Raimi loves Spider-Man.
Right.
And I think that's the big difference.
Well, you can see that like Tim Burton's Batman is a sort of touchstone for Bryan Singer's X-Men in the way that it's like, don't worry, this isn't a comic book.
Yeah,
like,
it's not for kids. It's not for kids.
It's very serious. And there's even that joke in the X-Men movie of like Wolverine's like
yellow spandex.
Yeah, yellow spandex, which 25 years later they bring back the yellow spandex.
People are like, yeah, we love it.
Yeah, Sam Raimi Spider-Man, which had the biggest opening weekend of all time, the weekend that it opened, it was something like $120 million.
I'm kind of fascinated about like why that is. Like, it was Spider-Man so baked into the culture that like people were just, what does this look like on the big screen? Because we had superhero movies before then, and they're treated as kind of like a joke, right?
Yeah, it's hard to know because like, you know, casting Marlon Brando in Superman and Jack Nicholson in Batman were these like conscious efforts to signal these are serious movies. These are real movies that you can take seriously. I guess Willem Dafoe is in Spider-Man.
But nobody was like, finally a serious film because Willem Dafoe is in it.
Yeah. I mean, the opening weekend of Spider-Man 2, I think was just a testament to how many people actually loved that character.
And I think maybe we could look at a little event that happened in that year, 2001.
Well, you know, it's a good thing they pulled that trailer out of theaters.
Where the Twin Towers were featured.
So that America could heal.
That's right. And so Sam Raimi, coming to these Spider-Man films.
Where was Sam Raimi at this point?
Not a place that I liked. So in the 90s, he got it in his ear, I feel, that he was known as a goofy, silly director. And that he spent years trying to prove that he wasn't just a big, goof 'em up. He made movies like A Simple Plan, which is like
good movie,
great movie, antithetical to anything Sam Raimi had done before, consciously so.
Well, it's very influenced by his old friends, the Coen brothers, but it doesn't have that comic tone.
No, For the Love of the Game. Terrible movie.
So that and The Gift I've never seen.
Yes.
And I don't even hear Raimi fans like going to bat for those.
If you look at Quick and the Dead, that is the most Sam Raimi movie ever.
Sure.
Like, that's him unleashed. And I think after that, he was like, all right, I just want to play it safe. Like, I want... I think I've said this before on a podcast, but I remember being in college and hearing from someone else that they told their team when they were making a short, they're like, let's not do this Justin Decloux style. Like, let's not doing it like goofy and like over the top. And I feel like Sam Raimi, I'm not comparing him to him, but he had a label of the kind of movies that he made.
Well, and in fairness to Sam Raimi, it's like, I'm sure he also wanted to spread his wings. I'm sure he wanted to do other kinds of things.
Well, he went through his career telling himself, I'm going to go easy on this one. Like Darkman, which opened #1 at the box office, a proto Sam Raimi superhero film where all he wanted to do was make a Shadow movie. The Shadow knows, but he couldn't get the rights. So he went, okay, it's not the Shadow, it's Darkman. Completely different, even though he has the same power set, basically.
He wanted to do Batman Forever also, right?
Did he? Maybe he was putting his name in that. I would love his version of Batman Forever.
Too bad we didn't get it.
Yep. He is playing this game. And even on Spider-Man, I remember in interviews, he's saying like, okay, I'm going to play it safe. Like, I'm not going to be super wacky. They won't be like the wacky Sam Raimi that made the Evil Dead films, which are cheap, childish pictures. Like, I'm going to play, in the, adult area. Because in the commentary track, at one point, there's a scene where Tobey Maguire is in a fist fight in school, and the camera goes like upside down when he like dodges a punch. That is like the most Sam Raimi camera move. And he says at the commentary, "Oh yeah, I didn't want to do that. It was a producer suggested it because I thought it was a little too goofy."
So, these Spider-Man movies, I hadn't seen the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies in years. Number 2 and 3, I hadn't seen since opening weekend. And not because I was like avoiding them or anything. It's just because like, I don't know, like I grew up with these movies. These movies were omnipresent. They were the like default popture in the 2000s. And I kind of wanted to come back to them because like so much has happened in the superhero genre since then that while these movies aren't underdogs exactly, but like they feel from another time now, They
almost feel like that early phase before. I don't want to say that producers took control because producers have always been in control, but it feels like that first Spider-Man movie. They went, Sam, go do what you want to do. Like you can just, with your toolkit that you utilize, you go and make your Spider-Man movie. We'll be here. We'll make sure you don't go too wild like the original design for the Green Goblin. Have you seen those?
No.
He was a big physical like mass that could move, and they axed that, and instead they went with like the Power Rangers thing. And they're like, but we have faith that you like this property. He sold himself really hard for this movie, and he actually really wanted Tobey Maguire as well. And I think Tobey Maguire is great in this role because he is such a weenie that you would never see a guy like this in a big budget superhero movie now. The way he looks, the way he acts, he is the perfect personification of the Steve Ditko Spider-Man who's like, I'll show them these stupid jocks.
I think he's excellent in these movies. I also wanted to talk about these movies because, I saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Ugh.
And like it must have, he must have felt like Dr. Frankenstein making that movie where it's like these Spider-Man movies, especially the first two, the tone that they strike is exactly what Jon Favreau was going for with Iron Man. That kind of like serious, but also light and quippy, like alchemy. And in fact, I would say the first 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are kind of going for that Sam Raimi Spider-Man tone. And Sam Raimi, for creating that alchemy, deserves a lot of credit for the world we live in today. Or blame. And like when he was making Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which I saw on a plane, I felt so dispirited because it's like, okay, here's this great director, the guy who made Evil Dead, and he's spending 30 minutes of this movie recapping the events of WandaVision. This is not like these Spider-Man movies. The first one, it does come from a different time because it's a movie-scaled movie.
Yes. Well, if it was made now, like, there'd have to be an action scene within the first 30 minutes. And there isn't in this movie. That's the wild thing. And
there would be thought of not just a sequel, but there'd be thought of
a setup of the next movie.
The cinematic universe.
Yes. There's none of that in this.
There would be like side characters who could get spin-offs and stuff. And not like these movies are pure or anything. It's like they come from the era where it's like they're thinking about like the Happy Meal. They're thinking about the ride at the theme park.
Yeah, we need Green Goblin that we can make into an action figure of some sort that we can sell.
But like this feels like a coherent movie. Whereas when you watch Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, if you do not have a PhD in WandaVision studies, you cannot follow this movie.
The issue with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I know people enjoy it. I wish I could be you. But like people say, oh, but you can feel that Sam Raimi touching it. You know what it feels like? It feels like storyboard artists who think they know what Sam Raimi likes, created sequences and went, hey, Sam, here you go. And he went, oh, okay, this is a bunch of stuff I've done in the other. Here you go. It's already designed. And you went, okay. He says basically that in the commentary track, which I believe are like mandated by the directors to do on Blu-rays for Marvel movies, because even the director of Thor: The Dark World is on the commentary track. He says, yeah, I had other ideas for this, but Kevin Feige says, that's too goofy, so we're not doing that.
Oh my God. So yeah, there's that scene in Doctor Strange where it's like there's a big eyeball monster. Or like Bruce Campbell has a cameo in Doctor Strange.
Terrible cameo.
Yeah, I agree. And you see those, it's like, okay, I see that this is Raimi, but it's like, why would I have crumbs when I could have like a whole steak somewhere else?
I mean, I don't know if it's just he can't make those movies anymore or just the system that he's in, but you watch a Spider-Man movie now, maybe like if you're a kid, it won't have an effect on you, but I feel like it'll feel different.
I feel the intelligence behind it, you know?
I remember watching the movie when it came out and finding it a little bit overwhelming in the fact that you get an origin story, then there's a jump in time. But like watching it now, I'm like, smooth. Doesn't go down. It goes down like that origin story in this first Spider-Man movie is so patient of like all the information, but at the same time, it's so exact about like Peter Parker is introduced. Everybody hates him. They hate him. And this would never pass any testing where they're like, why do people hate Peter Parker? Did he do something? Can you make him like a little bit likable? No. Like he gets on the bus in the first scene and like no one, like you can't sit here. Go to the back of the bus, you loser. Love that stuff.
Yeah, the style is a little bit heightened.
Yes, it is.
But also, I think it's grounded in sort of the physical reality of New York, which is also important because you see the Marvel movies now and they're all shot in front of green screens.
Yeah.
Even just regular street scenes are shot in front of green screens. And I feel like the Raimi Spider-Man movies have a certain like basic New York texture to them.
Well, Sam Raimi was always a very playful director, that he loves the physicality of making movies, the magic tricks that he can pull off. Like, one of the early scenes of Spider-Man is Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane slips on a puddle in the cafeteria.
Oh, yeah.
And then all the stuff on her tray flies in the air. Peter Parker, recently awakened with Spider-Man powers, catches all the stuff, and then it pushes into their face in one shot, and she has dialogue. The story behind that is it took like 196 takes because Tobey Maguire was actually catching that stuff and then before the pushing happened. And I recently tweeted about that online and someone said, yeah, but they can't really do that anymore because they don't really have the time. What are you talking about? You absolutely could do this if you wanted to, but it's the producers, the factory line that they decided is they cannot allow things to be tied down in one way that cannot be changed after the film is shot. And that's how Sam Raimi likes to make movies. That like the visual information presented in this film, the little movements, the over-the-topness of it all, that's his style. And Tobey Maguire is the grounding force in this, in that it's very silly. He's kind of talking like this the entire time.
Right. Well, this movie, like the Spider-Man comics, like the appeal of it is that it has this very human-scaled story about, normal kid problems, basically, contrasted to the spectacular action scenes and the incredible powers that he gets.
And I will say that there is a lot of, like, I was reading some reviews, more modern day ones of this movie, and people are like, it feels so, like a backlot. And I was like, I would love any of these Marvel movies to feel like a built location. Like that scene where Green Goblin attacks the, the World Unity Parade,
right?
Which is such a funny name. And like the whole thing, like, is a big shelf they built that like you see it crumble after a big miniature explosion. Like, I wish I could go see a $400 million film that could offer me something like that.
So, like the first Spider-Man movie, it's light, it is propulsive, it's a well-oiled machine. Was it Howard Hawks who said a great movie is 3 great scenes and no bad scenes? I think you got it here.
I have to say how excited I was when Bruce Campbell shows up in the cameo of this film.
Didn't those feel like little victories when you were seeing these movies in a theater?
100%. And we were watching it today. I discovered something I never noticed before, that in that same scene where Bruce Campbell appears, there's a guy who's like, oh, my leg. And I was like, that sounds like Bruce Campbell, which Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell love to dub like background voices like that. And I was like, I bet you they did that because they were allowed during that time to pull something like that off.
Is Sam Raimi's car the classic?
Yeah, it's absolutely in this film. It's in all these Spider-Man
movies. Is it in Doctor Strange?
I think maybe they shot it and it didn't show up. I think they tried. Maybe it's in there because he tries to put it in every single movie. I think like Doctor Strange, I saw that movie like it could still be good. It could still be good.
I want to believe.
Just sunk in my seat the entire time I was watching it, being like, no. Watching Spider-Man again, it just brought me back to like the joy of watching a stunt guy pretending to be Tobey Maguire. Just like the first time he web swings, he's on the roof and he's like, and you see that classic Sam Raimi shot of like the feet like dragging on the cement. Then it cuts to the camera zooming in onto his mouth, and then a very static shot of him just slamming into the wall.
That's something about these movies. Like Raimi is always doing something fun with the camera.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Spider-Man 2, which is universally accepted as the best of these.
Yes,
and it is.
Sam Raimi, I remember interviews at the time saying, I didn't get that first one right, but this second one, it's going to be perfect. I'm going to make sure that I get it.
And I want to say, like, this movie, just as the platonic ideal of a superhero movie, like, this is it, I think.
I think that when people talk about like the best superhero movie, oftentimes, if you had seen Spider-Man 2 when it came out, I think maybe it fades in memory if you've been just swarmed by the Marvel movies.
Also, like, this is so much like, in some ways, the Marvel movies. Like, this movie is not revisionist. It's not, even though Raimi is, like, a great director, it doesn't announce itself as an auteurist movie the way that, like, Batman Returns does. It's just like a really well-oiled, well-executed version of a superhero movie.
But I think that Sam Raimi does bring something to it.
Oh, he does, yeah.
Yeah, that, like, even, you think of Sam Raimi as a hyperkinetic director, right? That, like, when the movie was coming out, they're like, Sam Raimi's back. Look at this scene of Dr. Octopus. Great sequence. Love it. But that is almost like a parody Sam Raimi scene.
I think where I feel Sam Raimi is just in the pace of the movie, like the particular tone that's sort of lightly comic but also serious.
That scene of him having to take the elevator down, it's just done in one shot, or the scene that everybody talks about, which just the landlord's daughter brings him a piece of pie.
I love that scene.
Great scene that he had to fight really hard for because they're like, we don't want this in this movie. That there's enough like iconic, just the guy being like, rent. Do you know there's a whole subreddit of just memes of that like guy screaming rent?
Random aside, Christian Markley's The Clock, right? That installation where, if people don't know it, it's this 24-hour gallery installation where Markley pieced together scenes from thousands of movies where you see the time in it, and he created a 24-hour clock, like syncing up all these scenes. I happened to see like 90 minutes of it once that had that scene early in Spider-Man 2 where Spider-Man's trying to deliver the pizza and catch the criminal. I saw that scene like spread across an hour in real time, interspersed with a bunch of other clips. It was just a great experience.
I mean, right there and then, that when you are grounding the movie in Spider-Man is bad at his pizza delivery job.
Yeah.
And he can't do it. Like that's
just good filmmaking.
That's just good filmmaking. Yeah. That's a complete understanding of this character. Now, some people would say, is Spider-Man punished too much in this movie? Like, there's a scene early on where Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker drops his books and like backpacks just smack him in the back of the head.
Well, Sam Raimi's a sadist.
Well, Sam Raimi has said this. Yeah, he says that his favorite thing about movies is innocent people suffering. And I mean, that is Spider-Man.
So that's where we see Raimi here too.
Yes. Especially that, like, supposedly the last backpack that smacks Tobey Maguire is Sam Raimi. And did you hear that, like, people on these movies hated Tobey Maguire? Like, Joe Manganiello, I can't say his last name. Joe Manganiello. The guy who plays Flash Thompson in the first one, crew members said, we will give you $500 if you punch Tobey Maguire for real in this scene. That's how much it is. Like, Jake Gyllenhaal at one point was cast as Peter Parker, which I say no thank you in these movies. Because Tobey Maguire, like, even in the second one where he's asked to, I don't think he's at his lowest moment. That would be Spider-Man 3, with the rest of the film as well. But like the interplay that he has with like Alfred Molina, James Franco, Kirsten Dunst, James Franco in these movies, he's not a good actor, but I think he does exactly what's asked of him.
I'm hesitant to say he's not a good actor because I think he's good in certain things.
Yes.
Like,
well, in these movies.
But he's good in Spring Breakers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like there are things he can do, but then there are other movies where he's less good.
He just feels so wooden and stiff beside like Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is maximalized in the third one. But like Alfred Molina in this one is like the grounding element to everything.
And he's fantastic.
He's so good. And I mean, Willem Dafoe is doing something different.
Willem Dafoe is like hammy in the first one, which I like.
Well, because like Sam Raimi loves monster movies, and he's given a chance in the first and second, and some would argue the third one, to make like monster films of like people that are normal and have specific goals to them that are destroyed by a system and driven insane. That's what he loves. I mean, in the second Spider-Man movie, you would never see this in a modern-day Marvel film. Doc Ock robs a bank that it's just big bags with dollar signs on them.
I love it.
That there seems to be gold coins in these bags.
Oh, so that was the scene when I thought, like, why is this so hard? Like, why can't there be a movie that strikes this tone perfectly?
They can't.
Because like it has silly fun stuff like that, but the basic like relationship between Mary Jane and Peter Parker, and the dilemma that Peter Parker has throughout the movie of like, I love Mary Jane, but I have to be Spider-Man, and what happens if I'm not Spider-Man, and do I have to deprive myself of happiness to be Spider-Man?
Raindrops are falling on my head.
Like, it works.
Yes.
It gives the movie a real emotional core.
Like, you watch the train sequence, which is the most famous sequence of this movie, and you wonder, like, why does this work so well, but then any Marvel stuff is just slop? And it's because, like, emotional investment in what's going on.
And also, so, like, those scenes of Spider-Man, like, swinging through the streets of New York, which are spectacular. And, like, I was surprised by this on this viewing because when I was, a callow youth and I saw these movies, I was like, that looks fake.
Yeah.
It's CG.
Like there's some shots of like in the montage in the first Spider-Man movie where it's like just his head and shoulders and he goes like swip. And like it's clearly CG in the background, super fake. And I was like, I wish we had like that kind of fakeness instead of everything looking fake.
Well, yeah, exactly. You can tell it's not real, but it actually doesn't matter if it looks real because of the idea it's communicating. Like the thrill of flying with him through New York is so like, I don't know, you feel it when you're watching the movie. It has that exuberance.
Yeah, that's the thing about modern day blockbuster filmmaking is that there's no joy in these films.
I mean, lots of Marvel movies will give you enormous battle scenes.
But it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But flying through the streets of New York means something.
Like when you look at those Marvel movies, big crowds of people crashing together, and you're like, oh, I'm not as emotionally invested as Peter Parker being in front of a train and like trying to stop it and holding on. Like you need to take a step back and like, okay, what are my priorities here?
Yeah.
And how do I achieve this thing? And I don't know. I mean, it's going to crash any day now, and you can't really do it. Maybe we'll go back to this. I don't think so, but
who knows?
One can hope.
Who knows what's next?
But yeah, Spider-Man 2, probably one of the greatest superhero movies of all time.
I loved it. I was actually surprised how much I liked it.
Don't watch. There is a 2.5 version. Remember that era where new movies would be like, it's the extended version.
Everything was unrated.
Yeah, that the directors would had nothing to do with, and they would basically like put deleted scenes in.
Yeah.
So like avoid that like the plague. Just watch the original version. But at the same time, like Spider-Man 2 is kind of airy. It's not pressing. Like the first big action scene I think comes like 40 minutes in where he faces Doc Ock.
Yeah, well, there's room to breathe. There's room to be with these characters.
It's funny. You care about what's happening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it makes it sound like it's very grounded. It's not. It's heightened. We didn't even mention the Danny Elfman score in these movies.
Oh yeah. Well, the Danny Elfman score. It's that interim period before Hans Zimmer overtook what superhero movies sounded like.
Yeah.
The tone is sort of heightened. It's both heightened and it's grounded.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
It's emotionally real.
Yeah,
Like that's through the kind of absurd, directness of Sam Raimi. When you have grounded performance, like, for example, Cliff Robertson, who plays Uncle Ben, which is completely... That moment when he dies and, like, there's no quip, there's nothing, he's just confused, he dies. When you have it within the context of, like, more... Because it cuts from that to him, like, swinging for the first time.
Yeah.
And you are invested in seeing this very fake... thing happening, but because you care about it, that's why you get into it. Even that first one, when I think about Sam Raimi, I think about actually building a set where Tobey Maguire, when he starts to like wall crawl and it feels special because you feel like he's discovering it and feeling joy with it.
Yeah.
That's what's different from any movie. We sound like 100-year-old men being like, back in our day, Hitchcock knew real suspense.
Yeah. But listen, I'm sorry.
The proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. So Spider-Man 3. 2007.
Yes.
I went into this one having just watched Spider-Man 2 and having a great time. I'm like, okay, open mind, open heart. And I know that this is the one that has more obvious Raimi flourishes.
Okay, so this is not the movie Sam Raimi wanted to make.
Okay, but there are scenes in it where you see them and you're like, that's a Sam Raimi.
Yes, almost as if, and he's never said this publicly, he almost wanted to self-sabotage his own movie and make fun of something that he did not want to do.
Okay, well, can I just say, getting ahead of ourselves, I remember seeing this movie in the packed opening weekend audience, and the scene where Peter Parker is infected by Venom and he's like walking down the street like Saturday Night Fever and he's like dancing, and then that next scene where he's like swinging through the club.
Yeah.
I could feel the audience turn on the movie. I could feel the audience disconnect. And it's not like the movie had built up a lot of goodwill before that.
I love that scene. I think that's my favorite part of the movie.
No, me too. And I would also say to that audience, that's the scene you remember.
Yeah, this is the thing, is that people are like, does Sam Raimi think this is cool? He clearly doesn't. Sam Raimi does not like Venom.
It's supposed to be funny.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be like, look at this loser. Even in the scene where he's walking down the street, like pointing to women, the women are like, ugh. They don't like it.
Yeah, so that's funny.
Yes.
But I will say, though, in fairness to the people who don't like the movie, it strikes a strange tone coming 2/3 of the way into a movie that up until then has been like dreary soap opera.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well, so this was a movie that Sam Raimi, I think he had a contract. He wanted to make a Vulture movie with Ben Kingsley. That was his goal. And they said, no. I think you're doing Sandman, you're doing Venom, which he did not want to do, and you're doing a new Green Goblin. And he's like, all right, I guess I'm the Spider-Man guy, right? Can you let me do what I want on Spider-Man 4? And I believe the producers went, yeah, you can have Spider-Man 4 when it comes out. And he went, all right, I'm just going to stay the company line. I will make a very wacky motion picture in moments that's very all over the place. A very sleepy Thomas Hayden Church as Flint Marko.
So a few things are wrong with this movie. All three of the villains are bad. Mm-hmm. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Franco's okay, but...
Franco is having a ball.
Yeah.
Oh, are you enjoying your pot? So good.
So I like it when he has amnesia. Some of that's fun.
That feels like Sam Raimi being like, yeah, why not? He gets amnesia. It's so goofy.
But I feel like just like reviving the Green Goblin's kind of lame. Also, it's one villain too many. Well, actually, the one villain too many is Topher Grace as Venom.
He sucks. I hate him.
His whole plot, I think, is so superfluous.
Every time I watch a movie, I was like, oh yeah, Venom's in this movie, right?
And as the photographer, like who's like Benny Blanco from the Bronx, you know, like it's lame. It's a distraction. Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman sucks.
I like the Sandman scenes where Thomas Hayden, like that scene where he comes to life and he's like disintegrating as he's doing it. I think that's a beautiful scene. I think Thomas Hayden Church decided to play it very deadpan when he's acting and stuff.
Very. It's not as textured a performance as Molina gave.
No, absolutely not. And I also
and the retconning of Uncle Ben's death.
I hate that. That's awful.
Yeah.
No, get that the hell out of here. I mean, that's Batman-itis, right? Where it's like
the Joker killing his parents. Yeah.
Where it's like, we need to connect this in some way. And it's like, no.
Lame.
It's so funny that Sam Raimi can literally deliver the two biggest successes ever. And the producers are like, I think we know what needs to happen next.
On top of all that, I think the movie suffers a little bit of like Rocky 2 syndrome, where it's like, okay, like, why are we even here? It's just like repeating the same dilemmas from the second movie again.
So supposedly Bryce Dallas Howard, who plays Gwen Stacy in this movie, was supposed to have a bigger role, and I think she got pregnant, and so they had to change it at the last minute.
Okay.
That's another kind of like wrench in the works.
Yeah, because it kind of amounts to nothing,
No.
you know, her potential romantic character. But just the Peter and Mary Jane stuff, it's basically just a reprise of what happened in the second movie, but not as urgent.
Like this is the problem with Spider-Man, and it happens in the comics, which is that, you know, the people in charge, not necessarily the creatives, always say like, let's bring Spider-Man back to basics, where he's a teenager in high school. That's fine. You can do stories. But an adult Spider-Man who has to navigate a relationship with someone else, that's also interesting. But this movie is like, we got to break them apart, right? It does lead to the great scene of Tobey Maguire on a bridge being, why are you doing this to me? Which is very funny.
It has one of Bruce Campbell's most Baroque cameos.
Oh, I do not.
Do you think it's a little too much?
I think it's a little too much. I love him as the usher in part 2.
Yeah, me too.
It's so funny.
You know what? I like Bruce Campbell in this movie in the context of this movie.
Yes.
It's like, I don't think the movie's very good, so
No.
I'll take him. And I also remember the opening night audience that I saw it with, like, I felt a murmur when he appeared. Like I felt even the normal audience at like the Queensway Cinema or whatever was like, oh, it's him.
I think this movie is so overstuffed that like there's no emotional through line, which is the biggest issue that it has.
And it's kind of boring. It's like kind of episodic and it just lumbers along.
Yeah,
you know?
I will say though that the independent sequences stand up on their own as some of the best that like Sam Raimi was able to do set piece wise in these movies. For example, where he's just like picked up off the ground by the Green Goblin, and then he's trying to like catch his ring as he's flying through the air. The fight that they have that's set to like jazz when they fight, and it feels like powerful. Even the Sandman sequence where he's like knocking his legs out, there's a bunch of physical stuff. That's all fun, but you can feel the encroaching, like, we can do anything with CGI.
Yeah.
And I think that weighs the movie down. And then when you don't have a through line, it builds to a big climax of like, I don't really care about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I will say, didn't have a chance to send it to you, but the Bob Murawski went back a decade later and like re-edited version.
Right. Bob Murawski, the editor of this film, released his editor's cut.
Yes. It's only on, I think, a Blu-ray box set on the special features disc. And if you don't like this movie, you ain't gonna like this version either. It does cut out a bunch of stuff. It removes... you know James Franco, after he's like, get out of here, Spider-Man, go do your own mission. And then his butler, played by Bill Paxton's dad, is like, I saw Spider-Man come. That's all gone. Instead, he like looks at a broken photo of him and his friends and he feels sad. There's a new scene with Clint Marco's daughter where the Sandman visits her and builds a big sandcastle, and that was cut out of the movie. I don't know why. There's more of an attempt to create an emotional through line, but you can't save a movie where like all the villains just randomly meet on the street.
Yeah. If I were to give like one big prescription to like rewrite this movie and re-edit it,
Focus up.
15 years later to help them out, I would say, just like lose at least one villain, maybe two. Like if the Sandman had just been the villain all the way through, maybe with an assist from James Franco.
Yeah.
Like Venom is such an afterthought in this movie.
Such an afterthought.
It's ridiculous. And you can't get invested in any of them really.
No, because there's too much going on. There's too many toys to sell. And it's kind of almost quaint that in the first two Spider-Man movies, it's just one villain per film and then just robbers. You would never, ever see that in a movie today. And I'm sure when those movies came out, I was like, oh, I wish I could have had some more villains in these movies. But now I'm like, the sweet Just Molina being the main force that he has to deal with in this. Ugh. Anyway.
So what was 4 supposed to be?
It was supposed to be the Vulture. That it's like Peter Parker meets a Vulture. Sam Raimi had storyboarded the entire film, and the studio wouldn't tell him no. And he had to basically step back because he felt, you guys don't want to keep making the movies in this style. You want to reboot them completely, which is its own. Those Amazing Spider-Man movies are so bad. Unbelievably bad.
I remember very well going to see the first Andrew Garfield one and thinking like, why am I here?
Why am I seeing this again?
Didn't I just see this movie?
Well,
but like better.
You didn't see the part where Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy's dad dies, played by Dennis Leary. We all remember this. And he says, please promise me that you won't date my daughter.
Oh.
And then Peter Parker's like, I promise. And then the last scene is him leaning over to Gwen Stacy and going, the best promises are the ones you can't keep. And it's like, what? And on the commentary, which I listen to, of course, Avi Arad, the villain of these Spider-Man films, goes, I really like this movie over like the worst scene in the whole film. Avi Arad is such a bad taste guiding force that they gave him a gigantic credit on a recent Spider-Man film that's like, this movie could not be possible without the participation of Avi Arad and everything that he did. And they only did that to get him off their back, which makes it look like, when you see it pop up in the credits, like he died. And he's not dead, but they gave him this giant credit because he, I don't know if you know the history that like Marvel went bankrupt a million times in the 90s, which is why all their assets were split over a whole bunch of companies. He did a lot to like keep it and make it into movies and not just go away. It was going to be, I think, go under the control of like either a trust or like, when you default on a loan, it gets under control of just an organization.
Right.
That's what was going to happen. And he pulled it out from that. So good for him. And he's been driving it into the ground ever since. I mean, we love all those spum movies, right? The Sony Pictures,
like Madam Web,
Kraven the Hunter, the Venom trilogy.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, I'm watching those.
I haven't seen a single one of them.
You haven't? Well, new marathon. I cannot do that.
Oh man,
we haven't done a marathon in a long time, but I need something.
Yeah,
that there's a glimmer of hope in it, right? Like I can't.
I need a marathon of something I kind of like.
I don't know about that.
I'm thinking like Ernest,
Yeah, but but you need that one movie where you're like, okay, maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
And then people suggested get in the Discord of the Important Cinema Club.
What should be our next
marathon?
So the Discord is something you could access by patreon.com/The Important Cinema Club.
100%. You become a patron. It's on like the membership page. There's a link there. Click. It'll jump into the Discord.
And by the way, seriously, rate and review us on iTunes.
Yes, please.
We haven't asked in years.
No, we haven't.
and we really need you.
We need you, please. And so patreon.com/The Important Cinema Club. You can chat with all of us. I'm in the Discord
I'm in
all
there,
the time.
And do we have any letters this week?
We do have letters.
Oh, on Patreon this week, by the way, we're talking about, since I brought it up, we're talking about Troy Hark's new movie. What's it called again?
It's Legend of the Condor Heroes, The Gallants.
So the big new mainland Chinese blockbuster from the great Troy Hark. Is it good? Is it bad? We also talk a lot about Choi Hark's career from, Dangerous Encounter, First Kind to Once Upon a Time in China and beyond.
Probably, if I had to pick like one of my favorite filmmakers, I think I would put Choi Hark number one, especially representative of what I would like to do as well, and the experimentation he was able to push forward. And I'm not pleased with this new movie. Spoiler alert.
Maybe I liked it. Who knows?
Maybe Will liked it. Check it out, patreon.com/theimportantcinema-club. Our first letter is from Simon. He goes, "Hey, Justin and Will. Simon Barrett here."
Oh, the writer of Godzilla versus Kong. Wow.
Yep. No, Godzilla versus Kong. It's the newest one. The New Empire?
The New Empire.
That's right, yeah.
Which we both liked, by the way.
I enjoyed it quite a bit.
And also, Simon Barrett wrote a blurb for our book, Moturn on Moturn. So, and I think that's what got him the job writing the Godzilla movie. I think that went around Hollywood.
It had nothing to do with the film being directed by Adam Wingard, his creative collaborator, since they were making like movies for no money.
Yeah.
I think it's the blurb that pushed it over the line.
Yeah.
He did tell me that his original pitch for that movie was like There Will Be Blood, but it started King Kong. That first 20 minutes of There Will Be Blood, where there's like no silent. Like you just follow King Kong throughout the entire movie. I have an Essex question that I'd like to pose to you guys for either off or on the air. Well, you're on the air, Simon.
Oh, an ethical question.
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
I'm...
Listen, you've committed murder, but you don't feel bad about it. Many years ago, I programmed a screening series at a theater bar in my hometown, Ragtag Cinema of Columbia, Missouri. One of the films I showed was Ghostly Revenge 2007, which got my attention during its one-weekend four-walled midnight run at the Sunset 5 in West Hollywood. A la The Room. To my knowledge, no one has seen the movie since, but I've retained my DVD copy that was sent to me by the director. I'd like to screen it again, or at least offer it up for someone's Halloween fundraiser marathon, but I will be blunt. Audiences will be laughing both with and at Ghostly Revenge, which is a very funny film in ways that do not appear wholly intentional. Now, I looked on Letterboxd. Has anyone reviewed Ghostly Revenge? And I was like, oh wow, somebody did, so maybe it's out. Wait a minute. That's Simon Barrett's significant other. So
okay.
That's the only person who's reviewed it. The letter continues. A very funny film in ways that do not appear wholly intentional. If I could compare Ghostly Revenge to another movie, it would be Almost Invisible. It's a wild experience. Did I talk about Almost Invisible on this podcast?
You may have, but it's worth bringing up. It's this movie that's on Tubi.
Yes, it's on Tubi. It was brought to my attention by a filmmaker whose film has been released by Golden Ninja Video, that an actor in that film is also in Almost Invisible. And he basically said, Justin, you got to see this movie. And I watched it, and I could not believe my mind. It was so wild that I did like an online screening the next day, and it's on Tubi too, so I have felt no qualms of just putting it out there. Since then, breaking news, the director of Almost Invisible was a doctor, is currently facing 20 years in jail for an opioid scam that he was running.
Oh wow.
So like that's like, this movie feels real scummy. Well, guess what? A scumbag was behind it, which I think is the perfect spice.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time I've separated the artist from the art.
The letter continues. I love Ghostly Revenge, but given it has not been marketed since its extremely limited theatrical run, would I just be digging up a lost film to embarrass its makers, who may prefer it forgotten? I would be mortified if anyone were to release the 16mm short films of my youth, because they are terrible. But I also never put them in commercial theaters. What do you think? P.S. I just realized an important detail for this question is that I can no longer reach or locate the director. Otherwise, I could just ask his permission. But he seems to have fallen off the grid completely. Thanks.
So, yeah, the first thing I would say is if you can locate the director, do. But since you can't, I think, yes, play it. I think this is like a case of you found something in the trash, okay? It was put in the trash, therefore nobody owns it anymore. And also I would say, yeah, if you were like stealing somebody's diary, you were stealing somebody's private property, that would be one thing.
Here's the thing, is that you saw it in LA, and when you contacted the director, he sent you a DVD. So he wanted the movie to be seen.
That's right.
He wanted it to play. And
once a movie's out there, I think like it belongs to the world on some level. You know, obviously, like if you could locate the person and you can
ask his permission, he said, no, don't show it.
Yeah. And also like, you know, I think they're entitled to some sort of like financial compensation
if you're
commercially releasing it.
Yeah. But like, he's not commercially releasing it. And he just wants to screen it, for example.
I think once you put a movie out into the world, you have to resign yourself to the fact that it doesn't wholly belong to you anymore. And, maybe the reception isn't going to be what you want it to be. And that's just part of the deal. And that also goes if like years pass and you don't feel loyal to the work anymore. You don't feel it represents you anymore. It's still out there. It's still not really yours anymore.
I wonder how many DVDs did get out there. Like Will said, you did not break into this person's house, steal the films, and put it out there. Here's the counterpart, Simon. What if you screened your 60mm short films as the pre-show to this movie? Would that assuage you of any guilt?
I think it's a good idea. And last thing I would say is I think it was Franz Kafka's widow who like fished all his writings out of the garbage.
Yeah, because he wanted it to be burned. He asked his friend to burn it.
And isn't it good we have the trial?
And I will say, like, even though it's like so bad it's good, or that's how people interpret it, I think there will be a love, depending on how you frame it and how people watch it, that like, I just go back to Things, right? A film that those filmmakers, even though they did release it themselves, they did feel like, when we did our screening, they were a little bit ashamed and like, oh, they came to laugh at it and this hard work we did. But by the end, when they realized the room was with them, that they're like, oh, no, this is great. We loved it. So maybe that would happen with Ghostly Revenge. I want to see Ghostly Revenge.
I want to see
Ghostly Revenge.
Yeah.
So
it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Hopefully it can screen in some form, maybe in a marathon of some sort. Get those movies out there. I mean, even if people like see it and it gets back to the filmmaker who perhaps they passed away, who knows? Just people watching your movie and enjoying it, I think they would appreciate that.
I mean, George Lucas is on record as saying if I could locate every copy of the Star Wars Holiday Special and break it with a hammer, I would.
I know, he's wrong.
He's wrong.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that letter, Simon. And our next letter is from Mallory. And she asks, hey guys, new listener. I work solitarily in a warehouse and I've been flying through your catalog while I'm cruising around on my forklift. Only on speakers, no headphones. Don't worry, OSHA. With that, I appreciate your blue-collar intellectual approach to the cinema.
Yeah, just two lunch pail film critics here.
And your deep respect for the art form on all levels and niches. Speaking of niches, one of my favorite actors is Crispin Glover. I'm fascinated by his bizarre career. Now, the movies he's in are rarely good, but a certain subsection of fans will loyally watch anything he makes an appearance in, no matter how garbage, myself included. I know that Mark Hansen is a huge Crispin Glover fan.
Yeah, last time I saw Mark Hansen, he was telling me about how he's seen the Wizard of Gore remake that he was in, basically just for Crispin Glover.
The letter continues, I don't know if there's enough interest there to warrant an entire episode on him. I would love to do a Crispin Glover.
Well, I'd love to, too, for the films he directed, too.
But I'm curious what your thoughts are about him. Why do people like him? Is he a good actor? Or is it just eccentricity that draws people? Has either of you seen the two movies he directed, Tours? What is it? And it is fine. Everything is fine. So I will say the letter mentions here, they're sort of holy grail films because they can only be viewed via his tour. I haven't been able to catch one. They have escaped online, I believe.
Oh, have they? Okay.
Yeah, they have.
Well, have you seen either of them?
No, I have not.
So I saw
because he came to Toronto, right?
No, I saw him in New York over 10 years ago. I saw him at the IFC Center play What Is It? Which, if you haven't seen it, it's like basically a collection of transgressive imagery, very surreal. It's tonally, it's very similar to like Werner Herzog's Even Dwarfs Started Small. And then I remember, he began it with like this sort of performance art piece that he did, this like spoken word strange thing. Then he showed the movie, and then he did a very, very long Q&A, like probably 90 minutes.
Wow.
Where he was really well oiled. He had his explanations for everything.
Oh, so it wasn't just like an abstract experimental.
No, he wasn't. He was extremely like lucid about what he was trying to do with the movie. I left it with quite a bit of respect for him as a filmmaker. I would be lying if I said I enjoyed the movie. But after hearing his explanations for it and why he made it this way, it was like, okay, props to you.
Could Crispin Glover had a Nick Cage-like career?
I don't think he had the same careerism that Nick Cage did. Like Crispin Glover, there was a period when Crispin Glover was in a lot of stuff like Charlie's Angels. And that was clearly a choice where he was like, okay,
make me money to make my movies.
Exactly. Yeah. Money to make movies. And I feel like Nick Cage wanted to be an action star.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he wanted to experiment and do those kind of things. And people who know Crispin Glover, work with him, they call him very difficult in his choices that he would make on, which is what people say about Nick Cage as well, though.
I also think like Nick Cage is a really passionate actor, and he wants to do everything. Like, he doesn't just want to be an action star to like make money. Like, he wanted to be an action star because he was like, oh, what if I did that? What if I...
Also, I'm rich because I'm a Coppola, so I don't really need any money. Well, unless I buy too many dinosaur skulls and I owe a lot in taxes.
He needs money now.
Because I just think of like Crispin Glover doing, if you watch Back to the Future, as
he's good.
Yeah, but his performance is wild. What he does, like the laugh, he's like, ha 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 ha, and like Robert Zemeckis was like, what is he doing? But like it works within the context of that film, and it's kind of similar to like Nick Cage in Peggy Sue Got Married giving like that wild performance.
Totally.
That's why I thought like, would have there been a path of Crispin Glover being like, yeah, I will make my action film, but I guess that just doesn't interest him.
It's hard to imagine Crispin Glover in a romantic lead, which Cage has done.
Yes, he has. I mean, maybe it has an interest. So I recently disconnected from this email, saw like a Zoom interview that Crispin Glover did. He looks like he went to the doctor and said, give me the Giga Chat. Like, he looks... I don't think I would recognize him if you saw him on the street.
Really, yeah.
Which I think is great. But like Ruben and Ed, that's like a famous Crispin Glover, mostly made famous by his appearance on David Letterman.
Oh, when he almost kicked Letterman. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot there for Crispin Glover to talk
about. And is he a good actor? I think so.
I think he's great. Yeah. What are the other great Crispin Glover roles, though?
So I didn't see the Rat movie that he did. What was that?
Willard. That's
Willard,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will also say that I made fun of, Nick Cage being a Coppola. Crispin Glover's dad is also an actor.
Oh, yeah. He's like, John Glover?
John Bruce Glover, I think.
The villain in Diamonds Are Forever.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So he's always been around doing stuff. Yeah. Crispin Glover, like, I'm looking here.
Oh, who could forget Friday the 13th, the final chapter?
That's right. But yeah, he's in
River's Edge.
Dead Man. Yeah, he's great in River's Edge. Crispin Glover, I guess, played nice for like a very short amount of time with Hollywood, if you will. Doesn't he show up? Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the filmography here. In remember that Werner Herzog film, Incident at Log?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There's like a party scene and Crispin Glover shows up at the last second.
Man, I love that party scene because it's like, that was a real party that Herzog was hosting, and you get to see who his party guests are. It's Jeff Goldblum, Ricky Jay, and Crispin Glover.
I would love to be at that party. Wait, so the letter continues, and it's an interesting question about relating to the last letter we had. A follow-up, what do you guys think of limited screening releases such as Crispin Glover's films? I recall Memoria's original plan was to only screen at one theater at a time and travel around week to week. Where that's a Pitch
and Pong movie, yeah.
And I recall for whatever reason, there being talk that would never be released on home video or streaming. Yeah, what happened was someone leaked a screener online.
Yeah.
But I see Blu-rays on Amazon, so I guess that changed. Do you think limited releases are ultimately detrimental to film accessibility preservation? Or do you think that the artistic vision that they serve justifies its exclusivity? Does its ephemeral nature add to the specialness and attentiveness given by making it an event out of getting the chance to see it? Appreciate your time and all the work you guys put out into the world, Mallory.
Well, I'm a little cynical about this. I'm not sure if Crispin Glover's put his movies on DVD. I don't think he has.
Well, like I said, I believe they've escaped.
Okay.
That if you are looking in certain corners of the internet, you will be able to stumble upon them. But he did not want them out there.
Aside from that, I struggle to think of an example where they actually stuck to the, like, we're only showing this in theaters thing. Even if they do, I think for the most part, it's kind of a marketing thing more than anything. It's about the creation of exclusivity to guarantee getting people to see it. To that, I say I respect the hustle.
Yeah, I respect the hustle doing that. I mean,
what I'll say in defense of Crispin Glover is I actually think like the movies that he makes are like, they don't explain themselves clearly.
By having a 90-minute Q&A is kind of essential to the experience.
Yeah, I think he feels protective of them and he wants to explain what he was doing, and I respect that.
Mm-hmm. So you would kind of like, I mean, not look down on someone who wants to hold the movie close to their vest. Yeah, but it's like, if you want to do that, you can do that.
Yeah.
It's if someone was like, I really want this to be exclusive, and they mean it. I mean, like Will said, I can't think of one example. Yeah. That film that played at TIFF that they said they were never actually going to release.
Oh, the Midnight Madness film.
Yeah.
What was that called?
I don't recall what the name was.
You've never seen anything like this? Some title like that.
Oh, crap. Peter's listening to this being like, how can you not remember the movie that I played?
Sorry, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was a found footage film. It's like, all I can think was like, this must be the place. And that's not what it was. It's never going to get better than this.
I think that's what it was called. Yeah.
Like they said, it's only going to play in theaters and that's going to be it. But who knows if coming soon to Shudder or something like that.
I never quite believed it with Memoria. I thought this is a marketing gimmick.
Yeah. That like Neon was putting it out. It's like, it's never coming out until it is.
Yeah.
I want movies to get out there though. Like I know that when The Astrologer came out, the film that Nicholas Winding Refn found, and that they were only allowing to show as like the DCP they had, that they were not pleased when that escaped online. That like they didn't, because they don't have the rights to it, they can't put it out there. But like I feel like movies should be out there though.
Well, with The Astrologer, that's a case. That movie is like a weird vanity project that was made in the 70s by some strange guy who never made another movie.
If you get a chance, please see it. It is very funny.
It's great. And the problem is they had music in it by
The
Moody Blues,
yes.
who wouldn't license the music. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, obviously they're sad that it leaked, but like, it was just going to sit on a shelf.
Well, it was like when someone said, someone posted Thrilling Bloody Sword to YouTube. And I went, I don't own the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, like, it's out there. Like, it's fine. I'd rather it get out there after, a certain amount of time than anything. So, and because like the movies that I love, I'd rather as many people can see it as possible.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get into this. That Will has already been
piracy debate. I have no opinions on that. But actually.
I have no opinions. For the legal record, please let it show that Will has no opinions.
One last one. Vincent Gallo's Promises Written in Water.
Yeah, has never come out, right?
That played at the Toronto Film Festival.
Yeah.
I think it might have played at Venice that year. So I know people who have seen it.
Yes.
They saw it 15 years ago.
It's never come out since then.
And they are bearers of lost knowledge, and I'm jealous of them.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it.
But I don't think there's value in that.
And Vincent Gallo, supposedly, like, he didn't release that because he was like, I don't want the world's negative energy to contaminate this movie.
And I will not be negative myself from this point on.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on.
A very positive man.
Yes.
Who just brings joy everywhere he goes.
When I think of happiness and just like a light feeling, I think Vincent Gallo.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's too bad. I don't know why he wouldn't want to. I mean, obviously bad reviews suck.
I mean, it does have a mystique, but like if
don't you want to communicate?
But if it was out there, do you think it would just be like, oh yeah, Vincent Gallo made another film? Probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, legends are fun, but like you don't really get anything out of it at the end of the day. And you made a movie because you want people to see it.
That's right.
So but then like I hear like Francis Ford Coppola when he was making Apocalypse Now, he was like, wouldn't it be great if like it only played in one theater and you had to go in a jungle to see it, and that was the only way to have that experience?
Well, I definitely believe there are special ways to consume movies.
I know that Steven Soderbergh said like he wanted to make a midnight movie that would only play at midnight. And I say that's cool for like 6 months, but then you got to let it out.
Yeah.
Like it's an experience that is like in a small amount of time. And I say you got to move forward after that it can't last like that forever. So thank you very much for those letters. And next week, we're doing a filmmaker you probably have never heard of, which is our bread and butter.
And what is the filmmaker's name?
His name is Paul Donovan. If you've seen any of his movies...
I asked that question because I forgot.
Yeah, you will... you have seen Siege, which was released by Severin Films under the title... Was it Siege or Self-Defense? They had multiple titles.
I think they released it as Siege, but it's also, it's been released as Self-Defense. And I saw this for the first time when you played it at the Royal Cinema many years ago.
Yeah, so I became obsessed with this filmmaker when I saw Siege on a crummy VHS tape a long time ago. And I because he's a Canadian guy, and I hunted down like articles that were written about him. I think I've seen almost every one of his films, and I think he's a fascinating guy who is incredibly passionate. He's one of the only filmmakers that I stumbled upon an article in a Cine Fantastique magazine that was about him being fired from a film. And it was about his version, and then the producer was also interviewed that talked about their version, which was the version that was released. That he seems to have been someone who really wanted to stick to his guns, never got the huge film success that he wanted. He tried really hard. He wanted to make local productions, and he did, but none of them really took off, even though he did direct erotic films late in his career as well in that 90s boom. He is also one of the main creative forces on Lex, a Canadian TV show I believe we've talked about in the past.
Yes, the smutty science fiction show.
But we'll be watching Siege again because that's probably his best movie. We're going to be watching Paint Cans, which I've described as American Psycho if it were about a guy trying to get funding in the Canadian film government industry. And I don't know what the third one's going to be. Maybe the Lex pilot, which is 90 minutes. Maybe Tomcat's Dangerous Desires, about a Tiger Man, I think is what I recall.
Well, I can't wait to watch Lex and get a big old boner.
Yep. I mean, it's right there on screen. The big like dick ship with the big balls and, all the other sexual anatomy as well.
We really want to show you like a particular vision of Canadian cinema and television.
Now, do I also own Paint Cans, the novel, which came out before the movie? I do. So maybe I'll be giving that a read again. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Paul Donovan. It's been David Cronenberg is Canadian, but like, when was the last time we talked about like a Canadian filmmaker that's not David Cronenberg?
Too long.
So we'll be doing Paul Donovan next week. You listen to the Spider-Man one. You enjoyed it. We expect you next week to be there for Paul Donovan as well. Until next week, my name's Justin Decloux.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. As per usual, I would like to thank some of our new patrons, who include Kyle Gustafson, Ben Curtis, Victor Agiv, Gavin Byrne, Stephen Fott, Benjamin Vaughn, Rain, and Ben Sheets. Thank you very much for becoming patrons. We would not keep doing this without you. We got mail!
Yeah, we got mail. Big thanks to friend of the podcast, Dan Erdman, who sent us the newest issue of his zine, Headclog. Mm-hmm. I love it when people send us zines.
Yep, we have a P.O. Box number that you can find in the description of this episode. If you have anything cool that you'd like to send us, whether it be a zine you made, a movie you made, crew jackets from films that we've mentioned, because I jealously learned that another podcaster, that he received that in the mail.
Justin will watch your movie. And if it's good, I'll watch it.
Yes, that's right.
But I would love your zines.
Yeah, especially if they're very specific to the things that we like. So what's in this Headclog issue?
Well, Dan, kudos. There's an interview with David F. Friedman, the great producer of such films as The Erotic Adventures of Zorro and The Long Swift Sword of Siegfried.
And who can forget the much beloved, he didn't do, that was Harry Novak, who did the parody of Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, Please Don't Eat My Mother. Yeah.
Sorry, isn't that something weird, kind of like...
Yeah, David F. Friedman did produce Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, though. So, And Blood Feast. Who can forget Blood Feast?
So this is, I guess, an archival interview, because David F. Friedman is not kicking anymore.
Yeah, that's right. But hey, it's here. It's pretty cool.
I love here that he also has, like, dozens and dozens of newspaper clippings about stag films, as well as a article from Women's Issues in Men's Cinema by Larissa Shepitko, which is a essay that was written in the October 1975 issue of Soviet Screen magazine, which has never been translated into English until now. This is the stuff I want to see. This is the good shit.
Really cool.
I believe you can probably buy it. Just search Headclog and Dan Erdman,
who also wrote a great book called Let's Go Stag about the history of stag movies.
So that is D-A-N, and his last name is E-R-D-M-A-N, Headclog. If you want, that zine fix.
The real freak stuff.
Check it out. You read any zines lately, Will, that have captured your imagination?
Oh, well, I've accumulated a lot of issues lately of Asian cult cinema.
Oh, yeah. You've made it kind of like a mission. Have you gone searching online for them?
No.
Oh.
I've just been lucky. The used bookstores here in Toronto.
BMV.
Yeah, BMV, but also ABC Books on Yonge Street.
The good BMV.
Yeah. ABC Books on Yonge Street. I shouldn't even be saying this.
No, because you're going to blow its spot.
That's my store, okay?
Yes.
I go there.
So I talked to the owner there, and he's like, oh, yeah, I think he said I started BMV, and, like, it just disconnected from it later on. I believe they have the same supplier, because if you see, like, Overstock books show up there, they will also show up at BMV.
I've got some of the best discoveries there. Okay, recently.
Yeah.
I found, like, 10 David Dakota movies there.
I know. I was so DVD. Jealous. And you found them in the porn section.
Yeah. And they're all those, like, 1313, like, cougar cult shit. All of them have commentary.
Oh, heaven. Yeah. I would have bought all of those if I had seen. Where do they get the stuff? Why is it so good there? Because, like, it is... If you go in the movie section, the movie book section, you will find the best books there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I found, like, books that go for, like, $150 for, like, $10. And I've talked to the guy about this, and he's like, I just don't feel like charging that much for this stuff. Like, I want it to move as well. The magazine section, which is right in front of the porn section.
Yeah. And overlapping with it very much.
They have magazines that feel like fever dreams that they exist, that they'll have, like, 100 issues of, like, some academic magazine out of the University of Wisconsin, and I'll be like, wait, there's an article all about Toronto Chinatown cinemas in this?
Oh, yeah. So, like, as long as you don't mind, like, being assaulted by images of, like, people being double penetrated and gangbangs and bukkakis.
That's at the back. That's at the back. If you
like,
dare go.
As long as you are okay with seeing that, you'll also find lots of incredible magazines and zines and stuff.
But I would recommend, even if you're like, oh, I don't know if I feel comfortable about that, if you go there, go to the movie book section. It's gotten to the point that I'm like, this really rare book I already have because I bought here. Like,
but Asian cult cinema.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What is Asian cult cinema?
So Thomas Weiser was the editor of it. It was a zine that ran, well, a magazine really, somewhere between a zine and a magazine. It ran from the 90s into the 2000s.
What is the difference between a zine and a magazine?
Like the Supreme Court, I know it when I see it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, a zine is like it's Xeroxed, it's stapled.
Homemade, oftentimes by one person. And I'll say it right now, zines are better than magazines.
Of course, yeah.
No contest.
Yeah.
Is Shock Cinema a magazine or a zine?
It's a magazine with the spirit of a zine.
Yeah, okay. You know what I think separates a zine and a magazine? Circulation.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
There were a lot of magazines that, and zines that in the United States sort of sprang up when Hong Kong cinema became popular here. Like, in the Rumble in the Bronx, like Jackie Chan, John Woo era. And this was the best one, I think.
Yes, it was. But I will also say, if you look up Asian Cult Cinema, what you're going to find is a book written by Thomas Weiser. And avoid that book like the plague, unless you're treating it like a museum piece.
Yeah, don't take it too seriously.
No, because Thomas Weiser supposedly, or no, I think this is confirmed, he ran Video Search of Miami, which was the top bootleg place if you wanted anything. So he did all the cult stuff, Lucio Fulci films. He was really into Japanese cinema. I believe he had a Japanese wife, and he also wrote numerous Japanese-only books. But the thing about his books were, a lot of the reviews he seemed to make up out of whole cloth.
Yeah.
And a lot of the movies people have discovered do not exist.
Wow.
That he just made stuff up.
Wow.
And that was just like the world that he was in. But the magazine is different because they're often interviewing these figures for real.
Oh, sure. Like, and all of them, like Jackie, Stephen Chow, Maggie Chung, all your favorites from the golden age are being interviewed issue after issue. And it's not just Hong Kong. It's also Japan, Korea. Yep. There are columnists like the great Rick Myers has a column in every issue.
Is Ricky Baker in there too? I think he is, right?
I don't think so, but Max Allan Collins is.
Oh, yeah. Max Allan Collins, who's still kicking these days.
Ricky Baker, I think, had his own magazine, which I'm forgetting what it's called. I've been collecting another magazine too called Hong Kong Connection, which isn't as good, but I just like them as primary source documents. Something else I love about these magazines from the 90s is like they're writing about these Hong Kong movies and they're already such like fucking jaded fanboys. and they're always like,
and more comedy in this film. No, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, well, Jackie's last 5 movies have all been disappointments.
Drunken Master 2.
Yeah, exactly. Like Drunken Master 2, it's like 3 stars. It's like, seriously, they'll be writing this.
I remember Thomas Weiser review of Hard Boiled. He's like 3 stars. They have an armory in the bottom of a hospital. Completely unbelievable.
Or like, I guess Wong Kar-wai is like maybe not these guys' cup of tea because he's more of an art house guy. But like they'll say things like, well, another pretentious film by Wong Kar-wai. And it's like, oh, fucking sorry. Like, you just wait 20 years.
Just wait 20 years.
You're not going to get anything you like.
But you know what all these guys are doing? Thomas Weiser seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. I don't know what's going on. Supposedly, that Asian Cult Cinema book starts with an intro by Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
And I heard from someone who knows someone who knows someone else. So this is pure speculation that perhaps Thomas Weiser was a dealer in not just movies to Mr. Stone at the time.
Oh, well, I don't believe that.
No.
That doesn't sound like the Oliver Stone I know.
Do you know Thomas Weiser wrote a great book about spaghetti westerns as well? Do you have that one?
I think I do. Yeah,
it's really good. Yeah.
But I do have an issue of Asian Cult Cinema that has an article by Oliver Stone about Hong Kong horror or Asian horror.
Really?
And it's bad.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Because he's only watched one or two movies. What was the Japanese horror movie that had his blurb on the DVD cover?
I don't remember.
It was like, was it Evil Dead Trap? It might have been that. Anyway, there was one, basically he had only ever seen one.
Yeah.
And then he wrote this long article for Asian Cult Cinema that was like, horror, it tells us so much about our society. Just look at Bride of Frankenstein. Look at this, look at that. And then he finally gets to like Evil Dead Trap at the end. It's like, you've only seen one movie. I guess he was really excited by that movie.
Asian Cult Cinema, though, and magazines like that, I love getting them because oftentimes you're like, oh, I've never heard anyone talk about it like movies like this within this context because they didn't know what would stay and what wouldn't.
They
were in that moment. So sometimes they're very wrong about stuff. Sometimes they're talking at lengths about things that no one talks about that still have value.
And you'll find like news items.
I love it. Like this filmmaker's doing this, which you can't find anywhere on the internet.
Or it'll be like, there's news that New Line wants to make the Green Hornet with Chevy Chase and Jackie Chan. And it's like, what?
Yeah, I've never heard this before.
Yeah.
Because nothing happened to it. And so if you see those magazines, you get them and you send them to our P.O. Box.
That's right.
Do you think you could build a full collection of Asian cult cinema?
I think I could if I wanted to.
Yes, because I know you've got doubles that you've graciously donated to the Decloux library.
Yeah. Because it's like, if I'm at a used bookstore and they just have 10, like
you're just buying all of them.
Yeah.